What's up everybody, this is Josh, StarteringGutterBusiness.com. Today we just wanted to do a walkthrough on a copper gutter installation. If you guys need some help with more basic installation techniques, make sure and watch some of my previous videos. So depending on what climate you're in, copper will patina, and depending on how much pollution there is and how much tree sap you have falling on them and other factors, after about 10 years, here in Montana anyways, they'll turn brown and they'll be a pretty even coat of brown, and then at about depending on where you're at, 20 to 30 years, they'll start turning that green color, kind of like the Statue of Liberty. So keep that in mind when you're putting up copper gutters. That's kind of the future goal of what they're going to look like for you. A couple things we need to start with are you need a good set of gloves. If you touch this copper with your bare hands, it leaves fingerprints everywhere, and within a couple days they'll turn brown and they'll patina the copper material. So make sure and get some gloves to wear the whole installation. The next thing I want to talk about is solder versus glue. Copper, you need to solder. It's a 100-year product, the copper material itself, and a lot of cheaper companies try to get by with glue, and glue only lasts about a year on copper and it just peels right off. So we need to make sure and be soldering all the joints like we'll show you in this video. So the next thing we need to look at is dissimilar metal properties. Copper is a superior metal, and if you put that on copper on aluminum or steel, it'll eat the lesser metals away. So we need to make sure and use the correct fasteners, copper coated fasteners. We need to make sure, and if you have steel drip edge, make sure that you're not touching that steel drip edge anywhere, otherwise it'll eat the drip edge away. Bottom line is make sure everything's compatible with each other, copper on copper, or you can use brass with copper, and you can use steel and aluminum, but don't ever put your copper against aluminum or steel without a dissimilar metal barrier. So since we're doing half round gutters, I just wanted to explain the differences between the different profiles of 6-inch half round gutters. These are both 6-inch, this one's galvanized specifically, and this is copper. And they'd make two different bead profiles. This one is a traditional bead and it rolls out and around back into itself. And this one is a reverse bead, and this bends the opposite way. The nice part about this is you can put internal hangers in this to support the gutter from the inside, and you don't see them from the outside. So I got all this cut and dropped. I don't have a specific half round machine, so I had a different company come in. They ran it out, charged me per foot to run it out. I bought the coil for them and had it delivered to their shop. So I just took all the measurements before they got here. They ran them all out, and then I numbered them for which gutter goes where. So I need to make sure that all my measurements are right, or perfect, because I can't screw up anymore. I don't have any extra. So this has both inside and outside corners. You measure these pretty much like a regular gutter, like I've said in my previous videos, but so that's 71. So I subtract about a 1/4 inch per side, depending on where you want to mount that. So we're going to go about 70 3/4, and that'll give us a little bit of play for our strip miters to go on, and then room for that solder to go into the joint. All right, so we got my gutter over here, the one that we need to use for that piece on my stands. These are just regular gutter stands. I mean, you could use sawhorses or do this on the grass if you had to, but this particular house has rafter tails, and so I try to line these rival straps up with the rafter tails, since you can see each hanger from the exterior of the gutter. So I measured my rafter tail over there, and I'm going to put those, line that right up with my rafter tails. So I'm going to make marks for my hangers. And I usually try not to go any more than 2 foot between each hanger, so 24 inches. So this is what a rival hanger looks like right out of the box. I get these from Gutter Supply. They do a really good job, ship everything really quick. And they wrap around, they come straight. So you put them on. I usually bend, this is the roof strap. I bend that up and then line it up with my mark. And then wrap that around the whole gutter. Make sure it's all nice and tight. And I just use a pair of pliers and I pull this, put the strap through the hole in the back of the hanger. And then I kind of twist it so it tightens it up. They work pretty good. I put these on first before I cut my miters. That way the gutter's in the correct shape before you go cutting. So if it's flared out or flared in, it'll give you a different read on your speed square when you go to cut those. So a standard rain gutter machine doesn't cut corners at all. So this is just a guillotine on here. And they're all just cut flat. So I use a speed square to get all my corners cut. So we'll get into that. So I try to imagine this as cutting this with a chop saw. You can cut these with a chop saw. I don't like packing a chop saw around, so this works just as good. I make sure my front edge is straight. I kind of eyeballed this gutter. Make sure that's nice and straight so you have something square with the building to put your square to, so your corner is nice and square. And then I just look straight down on this speed square and mark my center, and then make sure and keep your line lined up as you mark on the gutter here. If you move your head from side to side, since there's depth here, it changes you where you draw your line. So you want to make sure and keep your square lined up with your center point. There we go. Usually just cut these with tin snips. You could use a hacksaw or anything, but this, to me, these seem a lot more controlled and give you a good clean cut. And don't leave any metal behind to mess up your solder job. So I just cut right on the middle of my line. Those strip miters give you a good, at least an inch of leeway, so you don't have to be too careful, but you do want it as close as you can. So this first one I cut is an inside corner. It's on an eave that goes into the building. They're called an inside corner. So if you go to order these parts, inside strip miter is what you want for this joint. This is the front of the gutter. So the next gutter is going to be coming off this way. And then here I'm going to cut an outside miter. So this is an outside corner of the house. So when I put this up, I just make sure that I have that 1/4 inch gap on each side. And luckily these roof straps give you quite a bit of flexibility on go side to side even after you put them on. But it is nice to get it close. So these roof straps come super long, and a lot of customers don't want these just bent on top of their roof and then screwed in. So I usually slide them under the shingles, and I go ahead and just cut. I figure out what I need under the shingle and then cut the excess off and then slide them under. Makes them a lot easier to get in there than trying to get that whole strap under there. And then I just visualize from back here where my strap's at and put a screw through it that way. And you can tell if you hit the strap because it's a lot harder to go through than anything else. So I talked about inside and outside strip miters before, and these are just pre-ordered. They're just trim pieces basically. This is an inside miter and this is an outside miter. So you trim these top a little bit, and then these flaps fold up and into the gutter and make a nice round effect to kind of continue that round traditional beat on the rain gutter. I got both of my gutters up and pitched the right way, and the first thing you want to look for is just make sure everything fits nice and tight. The main thing is to make sure the outside fits nice and tight and that these lines are nice and clean, no buckles or anything. You got to make sure the inside is also fairly close because you don't want to be soldering big gaps. So I use a MAP gas torch. They're nice because you can use them upside down. And then I use rosin core solder, Oatly. So this stuff has rosin built right into the center of the solder wire, and it works really good because it fluxes everything as you're going. So you kind of want to think of this a lot like plumbing. You want the solder to get pulled into the joint. So if you heat over on the edge, it'll heat both edges, both layers of metal, and then it'll pull the solder in and kind of bond that whole joint together. And then I also put a dab of solder on each zip screw, and you can watch it kind of suck around those screws. So we'll get some soldering done here. So I have some small gaps here, and I just kind of close those up with I just put my screwdriver on those gaps after part of it's soldered, and just tighten those up a little bit. Helps the solder stick to them better. So it doesn't have to look perfect. You just want to make sure there's plenty of solder in there, that all the joints are evenly sealed, and that all your screws are sealed up. The main thing is that the outside looks good. So there's a little bit of solder that bled through the side there, and that's okay. That's good. That means that we got solder all the way through that joint, which is good. That you can kind of see the heat marks on there, and if the client doesn't like those, then you can always put, kind of rub those off with Brasso as like a copper cleaner, and it'll shine it right back up. All right, so we made it to a downspout. I use 3-inch tapered outlets. They work really good for setting in the gutter and then connecting your first elbow to this. These I go ahead and use a 3-inch hole saw, and then I just set these into the hole that I drill and solder them in place. So part of the reason that I drill these in place instead of on the ground is you want to make sure that these outlets are pointed straight down. It's hard to do on sawhorses or on gutter stands. A lot of times you end up rocking them one way or the other, and then it kind of looks hokey. So I put them up, I usually drill them in place, and that way I can kind of see where the bottom center of my gutter is, and it makes them turn out really nice and straight. So these never do fit perfect. You can see these are a little bit higher on the edges. It is nice and straight down, so plumb. Usually I'll solder the two, kind of spot solder it, the two tightest spots, which is on the very bottom. And then I'll kind of use my screwdriver trick and tap down the rest of it to where it's nice and, everything's nice and flush. So the only thing different besides putting a copper downspout up than a regular downspout is you just need to make sure you're using copper fasteners. Same with the gutters. You can't be using steel fasteners with copper gutter. The copper will just eat the steel. And then you want to make sure and use copper clips to hold the downspouts to your building. So I just want to go through on how to put an end cap on real quick. This is a left-hand end cap. Going on the, if you're looking at the gutter, it's the left-hand side of the gutter. And we always solder everything with copper. A lot of guys glue them, and glue just does not stick to copper for any number of years. So copper is kind of a lifetime product, and we look at it that way. And so solder is gonna hold up a heck of a lot longer. So when you're soldering an end cap, just like the corner, you want to heat it from the outside and then suck your solder in from the inside. I usually do a couple passes. That one probably sealed it, but and I work from the top down, that way kind of your excess solder drains to the bottom. So if you look from the bottom of these, you can tell where the solder has sucked all the way through everywhere. And you can see some solder coming out the bottom a little bit. So that thing's nice and sealed and ready to install. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed our copper installation video. Make sure if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. We'll respond right back to you. And please subscribe to our channel, and hope to see you on the next one.